Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Alex has a brand new graphic novel coming out from Marvel and Abrams Books, Fantastic Four Full Circle. It comes out September 6th. It's a rainy night in Manhattan, and not a creature is stirring except for the Thing, Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These carrion creatures, composed of negative energy, come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system. But for what purpose? And who is behind this untimely invasion? The Fantastic Four have no choice but to journey to the Negative Zone, an alien universe comprised entirely of antimatter, risking not just their own lives, but the fate of the cosmos. Fantastic Four Full Circle is the first long-form work written and illustrated by acclaimed artist Alex Ross, who revisits a classic Lee Kirby story from the 60s and introduces the storyline for a new generation of readers. Bold, vivid colors, his trademark visual storytelling, Ross takes Marvel's first team of superheroes to places only he can illustrate. The book also features a special poster jacket with the front flap unfolding to reveal an all-new, fully painted origin story of the Fantastic Four. Again, Fantastic Four Full Circle, out September 6th. For more details, go to AlexRossArt.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Dean Mullaney, welcome to Word Balloon. It's great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, John.
Am I echoing at all? I apologize if I.
Yes, you are.
Hold on one
No,
second.
actually, I'm echoing to myself.
All right. Let me see what I can do here. Apologies. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. It's all my fault. There we go. Is that better now, Dean?
It looks like you look like the pilot in a cockpit.
It's good. There you go, man.
I'm still having a little echo.
All right. Let's see what I can do here. Jeez. I'm sure it's on my end, Dean. 1 second. Still?
When I speak,
Oh, you
yeah,
know
I
something?
can hear
Hold on, Dean. Oh, is it still? Because I will. I think if I plug in some earphones on my iPad, that should take care of it.
Okay.
So, had to jury rig everybody. I apologize for all the nonsense.
We're going to test it out one more time.
Okay, no problem. I got to plug in the earbuds first. All right, where the hell is it? There it is. All right, let me do that. Hopefully that's better. Are you still like? You say something now.
I'll say something now, and there's no echo. No, none whatsoever.
Dean Mullaney, welcome to Word Balloon. Thank you for putting up with my technical nonsense. Other than that, I think we're going to have a smooth conversation tonight.
Good.
Hey, honestly, man, I'm such a fan of, and I'm going to get it wrong, the Library of American Comic Strips. Am I saying it right? What's the title?
The Library of American Comics.
Okay, there you go. Library of American Comics. Honestly, man, I have so many volumes of so many different strips. And I'm so glad that you're doing this project now with Clover Press. Is this the new home for the imprint?
Yeah, some books that we do, series that we do, are going to continue with IDW, such as for Lynn Johnson's For Better For Worse, and Steve Canyon. But other new projects will be coming out through Clover.
That's excellent, man. Really, again,
we've got good relations with everybody. Everybody's happy with the books, and we've published about 250 titles altogether. I mean, it's just a tremendous library.
Very cool. Hold on 1 second. I'm leaning things on. You'll forgive me, man. I gotta get my laptop back up and running because people have comments already, and I'm so thrilled about that. God, Terry, as I'm off camera right now, Terry is such a seminal comic strip of the great Milton Caniff. It is so exciting that you are presenting these editions, and it's the dailies and the Sundays. It's the whole run, correct?
It's the whole one, yeah. But when we started the Library of American Comics in 2006, 2007, Bruce Canwell and I, we decided Terry was the first project we wanted to do because me personally, I had written to Caniff in the early 80s trying to work out a deal to reprint Terry with him. It didn't pan out, but you live long enough, you stay in the business long enough, and just about everything, every dream comes true. So we did that, and those are mainly, they were half-size Sundays rather than the full tabs. That's what I had in my collection, the three dailies, and a Sunday. And these are the best quality strips that we could have, and everybody loved it. It won the Eisner Award for best new newspaper strip. But in the meantime, I've always wanted to do a large full-size. In fact, originally I wanted to do a full-size tab, just like if you were reading the New York Sunday News back in the 30s and 40s. But we decided it would be too expensive for the market because there wasn't that a bigger market for newspaper strip reprints. Fantagraphics led the way with Peanuts, and then Terry really set the standard for adventure strips. But I always wanted to do, in the back of my mind, I said, one of these days, if I live long enough and I eat my Cheerios and Wheaties and be a good boy, I'd get a chance to do it again. And we're doing it now. I mean, it's expensive to produce because we're paying Ohio State, which holds Caniff's files. We're paying them to scan every single Sunday. But we're so dedicated to it that volume 1 and 13 are out. Volume 2 is going to be out very shortly. We're now working on volume 11. The first 10 books are completely done, just waiting to go to the printer.
Amazing, man. Again, it is such a great series. I feel a kinship to it, along with Dick Tracy, because it was syndicated by the Chicago Tribune syndicate, correct?
That's right.
There you go, man. And, I've been to Tribune Tower, and actually, the Tribune sold Tribune Tower, so I'm glad I got there and got to
I know. Probably about 10
years.
I think about 10 years ago, Lorraine Turner and I were out in Chicago with the Trib, and they took us down to the basement and left us there. It was fantastic. They had these wire cages filled with newspaper strip proofs.
Wow!
And unfortunately, it wasn't everything. A lot of things have disappeared over the years.
Sure.
But there was still a tremendous amount. And they just left us there for the entire afternoon, take a look at, and just having fun going through dusty piles of proofs.
Unbelievable. Do you know, what has happened since they sold the building and everything? If, they kept the archive or what they did with the archive?
Well, I asked them if they kept the archive, and the current managers don't know.
Oh.
It's a shame because when I was there, we made an inventory of all the Tracy, Little Orphan Annie, all the Terrys, but they're AWOL somewhere.
Heartbreaking.
It became this close.
Well, but again, thank God, you're doing what you're doing with the library and everything, and it's this history needs to be preserved. And not only preserve the strips, and please, I want to hear your comment, but also the great, back matter, all the great essays and articles and the photographs that you include in these volumes. It's stunning, man.
Most of the books that we do, no one has been able to put together a complete collection prior to when we've done it. So, I mean, we get 5 weeks of a strip here, 2 weeks there. You put it all together. I mean, fans have been really helpful between my personal collection, the library's collection, and fans. We've done everything we can to finally see the complete strips. I mean, to see all the complete Flash Gordon in the original sizes. It's fantastic. And same with Tracy. I mean, Tracy, we did it in 29 volumes.
Wow.
It's a lot of books. But
absolutely.
It's complete. No one's going to have to go searching for them now. Now they're going to have to pay ridiculous prices for the books on the back of the market. And that brings me up to a soft sales pitch on Terry. Buy it now. Even if you think $100 is a little too much, buy it now, because once they're sold out, they're probably not going to get reprinted.
Yeah, again, I mean, this is the generational thing of what market is left for these classic comics. I'm so glad that many of my friends that are current cartoonists, people like Chris Somney, have such a love for the old comic strips and stuff, and really look to those for panel you know the word I'm trying to say, composition and storytelling and everything. And I'm just so glad that there are those pockets of artists and fans that still appreciate this. Hell, as I'm seeing the comments already that we're getting and stuff, it's a good indication that that interest is still there. But yeah, as you say, man, I mean, I've heard other publishers and other IP people tell me it's like, well, the audience isn't there, and it's as much as we love this stuff, and it's like, oh man, I mean, it's important comic book history. These are the foundations of so much.
It is a smaller audience. I mean, the people who bought Dick Tracy or bought the newspaper with Dick Tracy are getting old. I mean, I'm 68. But what's happening is we're finding, like you said, a lot of current cartoonists who are looking at the classic newspaper strips and learning from Milton Caniff and Harold Gray and Alex Raymond. Alex Raymond,
sure. Yeah.
Exactly, and Hal Foster. I mean, so that's a significant part of our audience. It's not just old geezers like me. I mean, it's younger people too. People who appreciate the quality storytelling.
It's really eye-opening for even someone like me that grew up in the 70s. I'm 57. I'll be 58 by the end of the year, and I honestly. We were still getting Dick Tracy. We were still getting Lee Falk and the Phantom. I don't even know who was drawing it at that point. Well, Falk still was, I guess, in the 70s. But it's been fun also talking to the people that have taken over the various strips as well, and then just their love and stuff of these great things. Gary Gianni, when he was doing Prince Valiant, for example. Cullen Murphy taking over for his dad, and did he take over drawing for his dad, or was it just writing?
Yeah. Okay, I think he took it over.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, these are amazing stories. God, I loved the book that Cullen Murphy did, Cartoon County, about that town in Connecticut and growing up, surrounded by all these great comic strip people, both the humor strips and the adventure strips. But it's the adventure strips that. I guess because I don't even know. I mean, do you know the general reason why adventure strips were disappearing from the papers in the 80s, 90s, and now?
A lot of reasons. One, because the strips were printed smaller, so therefore the balloons would take up half the height of the strip.
Yeah.
And the syndicates felt that the audience wanted shorter stories, and it's if you've got a smaller strip 6 days a week, and you can't tell a good story, and they want you to wrap it up in 6 to 8 weeks. You can't tell a good story. I mean, Terry and the Pirates, Terry disappears for like 6 months, and we're following Pat and April Kane, and they meet Raven Sherman, and then all of a sudden we're with Terry and Burma. It's like the stories don't even end, really. It's a 12-year picaresque storyline.
Wow. That's amazing. I heard, and I'm trying to remember who did. Eisner interviewed Caniff. You can find it in print in the book Shop Talk, but also if you get the Eisner DVD that John Cook and Comic Book Artists put out, they've got the audio of his interview with Caniff, and he talked about pacing stories. Maybe he was talking more about Steve Canyon, his subsequent series, for people who are learning from this conversation, but. That they'd average around 4 weeks or so. But I guess back in, Terry, in the early years, 30s and through the war years, maybe it was just like you said, there really was no.
It was an ongoing storyline. It's like, I've been rereading them as I work on the books.
Yeah.
And I just get hung up. I go, I'll just read this 2-week sequence to find a good panel to use for promotion. And then the next thing I know, it's dark out. I've got a little lamp, and I'm reading like 6, 7 months. That's when you
I'm
think
not surprised.
that's when you think Caniff is finishing a story. Is a twist to it. Another interesting thing that Caniff did that he was better at than any other cartoonist, which is to recap on Monday what happened on Sunday. Most cartoonists would simply repeat whatever happened on Sunday in 3 or 4 panels. Caniff would tell
Oh,
the same story, but from a different perspective, either a different character's perspective or another aspect of the story that wasn't covered, but it's perfectly smooth. And when you think that he worked like 9 weeks, I think, in advance on a Sunday, it's incredible trying to keep track of it all.
it's interesting too because again, a lot of these strips, depending on the newspaper, would only be Monday through Friday or even Sunday through Friday, and not have the Saturday strip. And that was
Yeah,
always a challenge in terms of what to put in the Saturday comic strip because. As I've learned, reading various articles and interviews and stuff, yeah, a lot of papers didn't carry it on Saturday. So it was like, all right, you got to do something for the people that were getting it 7 days, but also not, lose people that were only getting it 5 or 6 days a week.
and also, being a collector too, I've got a lot of different versions of the same page. I might have 4 versions of this date, 5 of that, 2 of this other ones I'm missing. And I look at the quality of the printing. Some newspapers, some cities had fantastic printing, like the New York Sunday News did, Chicago Tribune did. But I've seen smaller market papers where it's all out of register, it's muddy. You wonder how these people followed the script. I mean, they obviously did. It was popular, but how fortunate are we that we can cherry pick the absolute pristine versions from Caniff proofs to reprint in the book. So what we're seeing is something that no one has ever seen before. Even the best newspapers didn't look as good as what our books look like now.
Wow, that's incredible. Man.
And growing up in the 60s and 70s, and I always wished that I could have complete sets of this, but they just weren't available. It's like you'd go to a comic convention or a weekly comics mart, and you'd pick up this Sunday or that Sunday. Well, very few people had complete sets. So now to be able to walk into a store and buy Rip Kirby is a miracle to me. I mean, the fact that I was involved in getting it out, I'm proud of it, but it's just so fantastic to make it available for everybody. And I'm glad that we have a nice percentage of sales, not just to younger cartoonists, but to libraries. Because once the books go out of print and they're expensive to buy, you can go to a good library and read it.
Man, that's so great to hear. And again, growing up as a kid in the 70s, the library was one of the few places before graphic novels and coffee table books of comics were so, out there as they are now. You had to go to the library. I remember the Peanuts collection, big giant book and stuff was constantly, being lent out, and it took you months, if that, to finally get it. And like you say, these really, man, congratulations. The production you guys are doing on these books is just gorgeous, and Rip Kirby's a classic example of that. It's so beautiful, and I had heard of it, but I had never seen it. And then when I saw it advertised, I'm like, oh, I gotta grab these, man. And I haven't grabbed them all, but I grabbed several volumes. I also grabbed Secret Agent Corrigan, and I over the years, I think the Checker years, I got a lot of my my Steve Cannon. And I remember getting back in the day, was it Bill Bass that did a Terry collection?
Terry and NBM did.
Okay, maybe it was NBM, but I thought it was a guy's name. But I just remember, like you said, it was a half-size book of Terry comics and stuff.
Yeah.
But and even Radiola. I remember Radiola doing softcover collections of various comic strip stories.
Well, but between all the publishers currently working with Pete Maresca, Sunday Press, Fantagraphics, the Library of American Comics, Hermes Press, between everybody, we've pretty much reprinted all of the A plus list strips. I mean, they're available to anybody. not just a collector. Anybody can have. And a lot of the B books are done too, and some of the C and D books. But all the top books really have been done.
I know before Caniff did Terry, I guess he worked on Dickie Dare, and I've never seen Dickie Dare strips. My one interview with Gene Colan, I know he was a massive Dickie Dare fan. What is the status of Dickie Dare comic strips?
Dickie Dare is owned by the Caniff estate.
Okay.
And you can actually pick up for cheap a paperback of Dickie Dare. The Fantagraphics published, I think, maybe on 1980 or so. It's not,
okay.
It's not the greatest reproduction. It's good, but it's cheap, and if you want to read them, go for it.
Well, and again, one of your volumes, your Noel Sickles volume, reflecting on his work in Scorchy Smith, that stuff was amazing. And also, again, in that Caniff Will Eisner interview, him just glowing about Noel Sickles. So what was that relationship, Noel and Caniff?
They were friends from Ohio, and were lifelong friends, and they had a studio together. They did advertising work. They helped each other out. Caniff helped write some episodes of Scorchy Smith, and Sickles pitch in. You can see, especially like I think when they go to Vietnam or Indochina, as it's called, in Terry, you can see all the foliage, all the background stuff. You can see it's pure Sickles. But some people say, oh, he was ghosting for Caniff. They weren't ghosting. They were friends who were helping each other out.
And again, that's something that I hear a lot researching the history of comic strips, of various cartoonists stepping in, somebody sick or whatever, and they take it over for a while. Didn't Frazetta for a while work on Little Abner, in fact?
He did Abner Sundays for years.
Oh,
I know in Steve Canyon, Caniff would hire Ray Berry, Don Heck. I mean, there were people like Heck who must have been a dream for him to actually do work with Milton Caniff. Now, he did it for a couple of weeks, and he brought his A game. You can see it. You can tell by the women's faces, Don Heck. But he brought his A game. It was great.
Well, and that's truly, man, that's the other thing, too, is beyond the men who originated the strips, it is amazing to see the others that worked on the strips as well. And shame on me, I'm blanking on his name, the guy who took over Terry after Caniff, George
Wonder.
George Wonder, absolutely, man. And I saw some strips. If I didn't have my technical difficulties, I'd post a George Wonder strip along with the Terry covers of your fine collections and stuff. But and it was interesting to read that, obviously, hey, you got diehard fans, and if it's not Caniff, it ain't Terry. And maybe there was that feeling there you go, absolutely, Dean, it's cool. I respect that. Again, Neil
Adams is another one. Neil, I was hanging out with him one night, and he said that when he was doing Ben Casey, he would get up in the morning and look at all the newspapers to see what everybody's strip, to rate them, who had the best strip, who had the worst strip. And he said that to him, George Wonder was looking like a bunch of amoebas.
That is so funny. That's awesome.
Wonder's gotten a bad rap. I'm not a fan of his art, but there's no reason not to be polite.
I hear you, man.
The guy's a pro. The guy was a pro. He did it for longer than Caniff did.
Well, and again, I feel I have that same issue with Wayne Boring compared to Kurt Swan, because I grew up on Kurt Swan, and when I'd get the reprint books like Superman from the 30s to the 70s, and it has a ton of Wayne Boring in there, and I'm like, I don't like it. And I know he was first, but it's like, I don't.
I always liked the way Superman just Wayne Boring. He always landed the same way.
And everyone's really heavy. All the men are incredibly wide in the Wayne Boring.
They have very stark shadows on the shoulder. But that's just that's just people's styles.
100%, man. No. I mean, it's like sport teams and stuff. You can't be a Bear fan and a Packer fan and stuff. But as you get older, you're like, no. You appreciate the other styles and stuff. Definitely.
No, I can hate the Yankees. I can hate the Yankees all my entire life. I don't have to be polite.
Are you a Mets guy? What's your team?
Red Sox and Mets.
Red Sox. Attaboy. Red Sox and who? Mariners?
The Mets.
Oh, excuse me, Red Sox and Mets. That's very interesting.
Anybody but the Yankees.
I get it, man. See, I grew up a Cub fan, and then I worked in sports radio for 20 years, and I got to know a lot of the people on the Sox and front office people, and I'm like, all right, they're all right. It's like, all right, that's fine.
Exactly. I mean, we can be playful and talk about it, but they're all professionals. It's like even like the quote unquote worst comics artist is a person who's doing it for a living. They're doing that. Nobody's trying to do a bad job. They're trying to do the best job they can. And I give them credit for it.
No, I am so with you. Everybody watching, if you have questions, I mean, Dean's the man, and obviously not just Terry, but so many of the other classic strips. And I'm thrilled to talk about it. You mentioned Neil and Ben Casey. When Neil was still with us, I know he was selling PDFs of various Ben Casey story arcs. Is that something you would ever want to collect?
You know, Neil and I went around the blocks. Probably almost 10 years. He wanted to redraw the damn Sundays because he didn't have proofs. We were able to find really good copies of dailies, and some of the Sundays, really nice copies, but still most of them were missing. And Neil just got it. You know, Neil used to get things in his head.
Yeah.
And I know I'm sitting down with Neil and Chris Snow and his daughter, and she looks at me, she goes, "Don't mention the Sundays." Okay. We're still searching for strips. I don't know if we're going to find them or somebody else will find them, but it's certainly a strip that's worth reprinting.
I know.
And I have Polaroids that Neil took of himself, of his family, using them as models.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh my God. Yeah, I really came to those late. And even my first interview with Neil back in 2005, we talked a little bit about it. I wish we had gotten more into it because, yeah, they're gorgeous. They really are amazing.
I mean, he was like 17. He was like 17 or 18. I mean, he was so young, and he was as good as he was when he started at DC.
Totally hear you, man. Absolutely. And I wondered if, because it was, licensed from the TV show, if there were any rights issues or anything like that.
The last I looked it up, I think Bing Crosby Productions owned it. Now, who owns Bing Crosby Productions? Not Bing.
Well, actually, Catherine May, his widow, the second wife, because I know they were going through his archives. I don't know if you know, it's a baseball story real fast. And they discovered Bing was on a European tour in '62 when the Pirates made it to the World Series. And so he knew he was going to be overseas. And he's like, do me a favor. He called NBC and he's like, I want kinescopes of the broadcasts. And it was like he watched them the one time and the Pirates won, and that's fine. And he never watched him again. And apparently a couple of years ago, Catherine was going through the archives, found the kinescopes, and they put it on the MLB network. And they re-showed them. And it was amazing.
Was it the Pirates and Yankees?
Yeah, that's right.
1960.
Oh, it was 60. Pardon me. Shame on me.
Bill Mazeroski hit a home run, 10-9,
Absolutely.
the seventh game.
Yep.
That's when I was like 6 years old, and I was just old enough to realize I don't have to root for the Yankees because they were the home team.
That's so funny. I hear you.
So I like the Pirates from that day.
That's outstanding. Well, again,
we won't talk about the Red Sox this year.
I understand, man. Hey, are you kidding? The Sox are looking really good up until last week, and it's like, oh man, they're hanging on barely to hopefully make the wild card. We'll see what happens, but yeah, it's baseball in September, man. Always heartbreaking. I understand. Well, back to the comic strips. Is there a hopeful ambition of a strip that you'd like to get more of before you put on another collection?
I don't think I want to tip my hand.
I understand. All right, that's fair.
Actually, most of the publishers are very collegial. We're not going to step on each other's toes. If Pete Moreski is going to do, if I'm going to do a book, I'll run it by Pete and say, hey, Pete, I'm going to do such and such. And they go, okay, I won't do it. And he goes, well, I was thinking of doing blah, blah, blah. So you take blah, blah, blah. I'll take this other one.
Well, honestly, man, this isn't me just blowing smoke up your skirt, but truly, I really think your collections, you go that one step further again, because beyond the strips, you've got these incredible articles and photographs, and you really get into the DNA of these strips beyond, what we got every day in the newspaper.
Well, Bruce Canwell and I spend ridiculous amounts of time researching, just researching and more. I think for the Terry, we did them in 2007 to 2009, and we're doing them again now. So much new information that we found just because it wasn't available before. One of the great resources are like the microfiche, the microfilm, newspapers.com, newspaperarchives.com, finding contemporary newspaper articles about people. It's just an incredible source. But we do spend a lot of time, and we're always looking for promotional behind-the-scenes art. And Caniff was a master at PR. He hired models wherever he went. Some of them were actual models that he uses. Other ones, there were just stage props to make it seem like he's drawing everything from life. But he really knew how to promote himself. And reprinting all of that material is half the fun.
Absolutely, man. And again, it is such a pleasure to read. And also, I think it gives people that are coming to this stuff with fresh eyes that have never read this stuff before, they suddenly realize the cultural impact that comic strips had, more so than ever, of the comic books. In fact, as you said, some of the artists that ended up working on and ghosting or whatever, or filling in for Caniff and others, the ambition was always to get a syndicated comic strip. That was the top of the mountain for so
Absolutely.
many decades. And it's great to see,
Yeah.
Please.
Our goal with the introductions is that you can know nothing about a strip, and you read the introduction, and we've given you a hand up from the swamp. We pulled you out of the swamp, and we put you on dry land, and now you can just go and start reading the strips. And if we don't do that, we're not doing our job. We're not preaching to the converted. We want to have introductions that are exciting to everybody. I just heard from a fan, a guy's older than me, he's been collecting longer than I have, and he says, I didn't think there's any more Caniff promotional art that I haven't seen, but I just looked at volume 13 of Terry, and there's a whole bunch of it. And that's how excited we get. I mean, we jump up and down. If they let us jump up and down the library tables, we would do it there too. But it's just so much fun to find new things. Like we found the art that Caniff drew of the Dragon Lady for Orson Welles. Orson Welles wanted a drawing of Terry and the Pirates, and we found that it was on Heritage, actually.
Wow. I have heard that Peter Bogdanovich, Orson Welles interview, Bogdanovich wrote a book, everybody, called This is Orson Welles, that transcribed these audio interviews that he did with Orson, and they also were available as a book on tape. And in fact, you could find it on YouTube, of those conversations. And man, Orson Welles loved comic strips, and as you say, very proudly said, "I've got a painting of the Dragon Lady that Caniff made for me, or whatever."
That's right.
If it's not a full painting, man, let's and also let's talk about the strip itself, because we really been talking about it, but now let's get into the story and stuff. How did was this a Caniff original idea? Did the Tribune Syndicate come to him with a concept? I mean, how did Terry start?
I think you should buy the first book and find out.
All right, fair enough. No, that's fine.
I started off where the syndicate, Captain Patterson, the head of the syndicate, asked Caniff, and Caniff was doing Dickie Dare for the Associated Press, and Patterson wanted a new strip, and he says, I want pirates, I want the kids, I want a romantic interest. He gave us some bare bones things. And he had this stupid thing about a treasure map, which luckily Caniff dropped out pretty quickly. But the basic concept, basic plot, was from Captain Patterson. But that was just simply a ridiculously loose outline. It's what Caniff did with it that made it what it is.
Foreign intrigue as a genre is some of my favorite storytelling from the 30s and the 40s. And obviously, Terry and the Pirates is a classic example of that. Very, uh, but grounded in reality. I mean, that's the other great thing, and especially in that pre-World War II period, this is taking place in China. And then as the war started to brew in the very late 30s, early 40s, the conflict with Japan happens with China, and it's interesting. Not only Pat and Terry. First of all, Terry being a Terry being the lead with an adult sidekick, Pat, is pretty amazing and pretty novel
Yeah,
for its time.
yeah. I mean, it's something that was common at the time.
It was common
Little,
at the time. I didn't realize it.
and Caniff, Caniff used the same concept with Dickie Dare. In fact, Dickie Dare and I forgot the guy's name. They simply Terry with blonde hair turned to black and black hair turned to blonde.
Okay, all right,
And
and then
yeah, so I mean, he uses some of the what he's already done in Dickie Dare visually, not contextually.
and the Dragon Lady, the great femme fatale of Terry and the
The
Pirates.
Dragon Lady, she shows up in the very first Sunday page.
Beautiful. I mean, again, Caniff knew how to draw beautiful women, and also just the dynamics of the character as World War II came upon us and everything. And the Dragon Lady became an ally of Terry and
Yes.
Pat.
The interesting thing is that before the war, Caniff started learning a lot more about the Chinese people and politics in China, and he was treating them with respect. At the beginning, he used words like China boy and some other words that
Sure,
we don't use anymore.
certainly.
But it wasn't done in maliciousness. It was done in ignorance, I think. But the Chinese characters really developed. They become these strong, cohesive units who are trying to protect themselves from a foreign invader. Now, the syndicate wouldn't let Caniff call them Japanese, so he had to call them the invaders. This is before Pearl Harbor. After Pearl Harbor, they can call anything they want, according
Certainly.
to the Tribune. But before that, they were just the invaders, and Caniff he was right on top of current events. And one review in the New Yorker when we did our first series said what makes it so good is that Caniff plays it straight. He doesn't play them all as caricatures. It started off that way, but he really did as realistic a job as he could.
That's great, and that was my question. And you just kind of answered it in terms of putting this stuff out now with today's cultural sensitivities. Was there any trepidation on Clover Press's part, or anyone, or IDW back in the day, or anyone that you've dealt with in terms of some of the stereotypes of the day that were sadly common parlance? And again, it was a different time.
Well, we put a disclaimer in books that have questionable material. In Terry, it's a lot more involved at the beginning years. So I decided before anybody even saw the book, Bruce Campbell and I went over what we were going to do to address the issue. So in volume 13, which is out, we added 4 pages to the book, not just a paragraph, a sentence or a paragraph, 4 complete full pages discussing race and Caniff's attitude and the strips in the early years. So we address it. We don't excuse it.
No,
but we address it, and everybody can make their own conclusions. And also, we're an archival comic strip publisher. We're not selling to kids. We're not going to be influencing little kids. The books are expensive. They're aimed at collectors. This is a discussion I had with the Tribune people. They asked, well, what about the racial issues? Well, I said we're not selling to kids. We're selling to hardcore adults in libraries who know what they have, who know what the strip is. So there won't be any surprises.
Understood. And yeah, I appreciate that. And also, you know, again, it's, as you say, these are archival. You want them to be what they were, but it's fair also to give an explanation of and putting things in context. So I think that's I think that's the responsible thing to do. I think that's great. Yep. So volume 13, as you say, volume 1, obviously this is the earliest stuff. What is in volume 13?
Volume 13 is a complete history of Terry and the Pirates. It's all the introductions from the original series that Bruce wrote, which probably account for about 40% of the new books, and all the new additional research he did and I did, and he incorporated into a full book, so that when you buy Volume 1 through Clover, you get Volume 13 for free. So,
oh wow!
No, one, we're nice guys. That's started up. But I'm not a dummy. I realize that as a collector, if you have Volume 1 and Volume 13, you're going to buy those middle ones. You're not going to let it sit there lonesome, because if you buy them all, this is what the spine will be on all 13 books.
Wow. That's amazing. That's beautiful, man. That's interesting because I wondered what 13 was comprised of, and so it's kind of it's an overlook of the entire run then.
It's an overlook of the run with all the background information we've been talking about that we put in our books. This is a standalone book.
That is so great. That is so fantastic. Did Caniff ever go to San Diego Comic-Con or any of the?
Oh, sure. That's where I met him the one time. I published the last book.
Yeah.
I published the last book of his while he was still alive. It was a collection of his newspaper of patriotic strips that Shel Dorf edited. And no, Shel brought a few of us up to meet Caniff and his wife in their hotel room in San Diego. It was a treat. He acknowledged that he knows he lost some readers in Steve Canyon when he was doing his anti-Vietnam protest strips.
Sure.
But he was realistic about it. But I got to meet him. I got to publish a book with him, work with him, and doing his signed tip-in plate. He hooked us up with Jimmy Stewart, so we got an introduction by Jim.
Wow, Stewart. Absolutely.
Yeah. I saved that one. I had that envelope, and nobody's ever getting that.
Fantastic, man. That is so ironic. I literally 2 weeks ago rewatched Strategic Air Command, Stewart's pro SAC prop. I'm saying that. I mean, kind of propaganda film again. Jimmy Stewart, very, very. I mean, God was in the reserves and was a general. Made it up the ranks from World War II to eventually retiring as a general. So this and again, I think his politics and Canyons were very much aligned. So.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
And then Caniff, Caniff had become close with the military during Terry, and he wasn't going to just make an about face. When he starts Steve Canyon. I mean, Steve Canyon starts off, when Canyon's not in the military. He's an adventurer. But right. once the Korean War starts, he re-ups. And actually, the strip guy got better.
I hear you, man. I absolutely hear you. And I've enjoyed every volume of Canyon that I've ever read. I've enjoyed every volume of Terry that I've ever read. Again, the guy was just a master storyteller. And really a master draftsman as well. Was it Caniff that had, oh, darn it, now I'm blanking, shame on me. Saturday Evening Post, it wasn't him, it was his son or his nephew. Damn it. The guy, the Rockwell. Did a Rockwell assist?
Oh, Dick Rockwell.
Yeah.
Was Caniff hired him, I think as early as 1953 on Steve Canyon, and he basically Caniff would do rough layout, and then Rockwell would pencil it, and then Caniff would change it and ink it.
Understood. Yeah, I think that's amazing. That a Rockwell was assisting Caniff and everything. It's cool. Did Dick Rockwell ever do his own strips?
No,
okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Are there other, like you mentioned, Don Heck? Are there other comic book names from the Silver Age that cut their teeth? I mean, I know Al Williamson certainly did his Flash Gordons and stuff like that. Are there other comic book names that?
Al Williamson also worked on Secret Agent Corrigan, of course.
That's right. Yes, indeed. Of course he did. Yes, and I love again, man.
And also, he ghosted for work with John Prentice on Rip Kirby.
Oh, wow. Yeah, on Rip Kirby. That's amazing. Wow. Jesus. No, honestly, Dean, I can't thank you enough for doing these things. Truly, it is so exciting to be exposed to this art and storytelling. And again, the level of sophistication. If listeners and viewers have never experienced it, it will blow your mind at how great these things are. And you really do appreciate them. And of course, they were masters, and all the comic book people that we adore looked up to them, and Leonard Starr and all these other great draftsmen that were doing comic strips and stuff. But yeah, it really was this incredible thing. Also, I find it interesting during the Wortham scare and the Senate hearing panels about the violence and sexuality in comics in the 50s that a lot of the comic strip people really kind of separated themselves from the comic book people.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. You can find interesting transcripts of testimony from the Walt Kellys and the like and everything. They're like, hey, that's we do something very different. Our businesses run very differently and everything. So yeah. I think it's interesting. And then Caniff, the reason to leave, and it's so funny because again, what goes around comes around. I mean, it's no different today when you see creator-owned comic books and stuff. He wanted more creator control. And is that why he stopped doing Terry?
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, he thought that he was looking out for, if he got sick, if he didn't work for a week, he doesn't get paid because he's not going to be getting work. He wanted to make sure his wife was taken care of, and the Chicago Sun people, the Marshall Fields people, came to talk to him and made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
That's amazing.
He owns Steve Canyon. Now, would he stayed with Terry if they offered him a better deal? Probably.
Oh, interesting.
But we'll never know. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. And yeah, as far as the syndicate was concerned, fine. We'll give it to George Wonder and move on. Business as usual. And then to Wonder's credit, I mean, the strip, ran another 27 years, something like that.
From 1947 to 73.
26
years. A long
yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, again, so I appreciate that. The guy, and again, because of his horrific personal life, man, we talk about Bill Cosby and how I think his history is being wiped in a lot of ways because of his horrific things. Al Capp, I read that Dennis Kitchen co-written biography of him, and I had no idea. And that was just horrific. And I've even found, and again, this shows you the level of influence that cartoonists had during this zenith of comic strips and their importance and stuff. Al Capp was all over the media, man. I mean, I've heard radio shows, panel shows, where he's just this charming man, kind of, being fast and as funny as any radio comedian of the day. And then again, sadly, we learned of his horrific, harassment, in some cases, even rape of several women. And thank God, Brit Hume and I forget the columnist that Brit Hume was the leg man for, that kind of exposed Cap's abusive behavior in the 70s.
Was it Jack Anderson?
It was Jack Anderson. There you see, Dean. I'm leaning on you, Dean. Absolutely, man. That's exactly who it was. And it's a fascinating story. But then, yeah, what do we do? What do we do with Lil Abner? Because again, Lil Abner was such an important reflection of pop culture society of the day.
And he created so many things that are still with us. Terms like the double whammy or Sadie Hawkins Day. I mean, they're not as popular as they were at one point, but he was a great writer.
Yeah,
really great writer. He was apparently was a pig.
Yes,
he was a good writer.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's that separating the art from the artist. But again, I understand people too that it's like, yeah, but. So I appreciate that argument, but again, it's like, I don't know, man. Little Abner really was just this cultural thing, and yeah, I mean, it's and I don't mean this in a negative way about Charles Schultz, but like Al Capp was like Charles Schultz with a personality. I mean, Charles Schultz is such an introvert and such a quiet man, and I love the interviews that he did, and I find him fascinating as well. But Al Capp was just very out there.
Cap would feel at home with cable TV these days.
100%. Oh yeah.
He's a kind of loudmouth who would get attention, whereas Schultz, who's more serene, more intellectual, I think. Um,
100%, man. Oh yeah, and
it isn't out there. It isn't out there. It shouldn't be. I'm glad not.
well, and it's ironic because both were interviewed by Dick Cavett at various stages of Cavett's talk shows. And there's an early '70s one with Al Cap when he was running for, I want to say, Senate in Massachusetts, and then I think an '80s interview or even maybe '90s interview that Cavett did with Charles Schultz. And you really get the different personalities. But like I said, I know there's an album of Al Cap where he would go to college campuses and basically challenge the hippie culture. And that's kind of where his politics changed because he really was
Sure.
a Democrat. Please, yeah, you got more information than I do.
You know, it's unfortunate that that later part of his life is really what defines him, but it's his own fault.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know you know it, but if people don't know, the famous John Lennon Yoko Ono bed-in, you can find footage of Al Cap berating John and Yoko, and it's insane. It's like, all right, it's just crazy. So, geez, honestly, Dean, again, I know you're heavily involved with the Terry stuff. Is that going to take your full attention, or do you? I don't want you to not spoil any marketing plans that you have of other strips you might be doing in the near future. But yeah, where do you have you got a few things coming up beyond?
I got a couple of things that keep me from fully retiring.
That's great, man. Well, hell, and weren't you with Eclipse back in the day?
Yeah, I started Eclipse in 1977.
Dean, I loved Eclipse, man. I loved Weekly Airboy or Bi-Weekly, whatever it was, and
it was bi-weekly.
Yeah, and again, hey man, you guys were the original American publishers of Miracle Man, Marvel Man.
That's right.
And
it was a good 17-year run.
Wow, that's excellent.
It was the beginning of the direct market, and there were no rules. We were all collectively writing the rules for the direct market, and it was a blast. You want to do something, just do it. And then it wasn't all the constraints that came later. It's like the Wild West.
Absolutely, man. And again, those were my college years, reading a lot of Eclipse and everything, and then high school years. And it was such a pleasure. And really, it was so exciting. Again, I mean, just growing up on mostly Marvel, DC, a little bit of Harvey, a little bit of a couple of the other, Archie certainly, and Dell and Gold Key. But man, it just all those great comics that were coming out of the '80s, the black and whites and the full color ones, they were just exciting to read.
It's funny when we look back about the whole black and white boom. There was a negative connotation to black and white comics because that was just the era. Now, you look at a comic or a graphic novel, no one even thinks it's color, it's black and white, it's two color. No, it's a great art and great story. It's just funny when you think about it.
And the doors that you and the others opened up to the new generation of artists and writers, and God, it was the black and white, Max Collins and Terry Beatty, Ms. Tree, and just tons of stuff. What were some of your favorites of the Eclipse stuff that you guys put out?
I'm gonna piss somebody off by forgetting them. Well, Don McGregor. Anything Don McGregor wrote,
yes,
is on my list. Don remains one of the closest people to my heart.
Oh, that's great, man. I
just talked to him a couple of days ago.
Oh,
we're going to do a collection of ragamuffins.
Hey, that's awesome.
We found 20 pages, photocopies of Gene Colan, an unpublished ragamuffin story.
That
we're going to reprint.
Man. Oh God!
Now, sometime next year.
Wow! Oh man! Well, you're going to have to come back, obviously, to talk about that.
I will. We'll get Don on too. He's entertaining.
Honestly, Dean, truly, I've reached out a couple times in the past. I don't even know if I have current information, so I might bug you after the show to get current information on Don. He was on a panel with Chris Priest and Bob Almond and Afua Richardson about Black Panther, and that's the one on-record conversation I had that involved Don. And I mean, Detective Zink and Sable and all that stuff. Saber, pardon me. You're right, Saber. Shame on me. Man, that stuff was just, again, just so electric. Ragamuffins as well. And yeah, he and Gene were such a great team. My God.
To me, it was always a pleasure working with Gene too.
I believe it. What a sweetheart. My God. Man, you talk about technical difficulties tonight. I interviewed Gene for an hour, and it didn't record. And thank God I had enough gumption to go, Gene, I'm so sorry. Like I emailed him the next day, and I said, Gene, I'm so sorry. It didn't record. Could we do it again? And he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And once I got him on the phone, he goes, I like talking to you. You're like Bob Costas. This is fun. And I'm like, great. Fantastic, man. So what a sweetheart. No, he was lovely, man. And I saw him at his last New York show, and it broke my heart because I saw how much he was hurting and everything as far as his health. But I'm really glad I got a chance to see him one last time. And,
I got a chance to see him in San Diego too.
Yeah. Oh well, again,
I used to love going over their house and look, not just to pick up art or drop off a script to him because he lived in New Jersey, but also just to look on the walls. Look at the art. Art that he did of Paris when he was in the occupation army.
Wow.
And just beautiful little drawings that were framed all around the house. What a pleasure.
I got him. I got a commission from him, and it's on one of my walls of a blade, and it's a classic '70s, perfect Gene Colan blade, all in pencil, and just the stuff he was even doing at the end, that was just him in pencil and stuff. Just a joy to look at. I mean, just beautiful stuff. Yeah, no, amazing man, absolutely. Again, Dean, I can't thank you enough for talking tonight. I'm so glad that Clover Press is behind you. With the Library of American Comics and this Terry and the Pirates run. Again, everybody, Volume 1 and Volume 13 currently available. And again, Dean, like if they buy Volume 1, they get Volume 13 along with it?
I think I'm not sure if it's only when they buy it from Clover, so you have to check with Clover on it.
Okay.
But it's available.
Well, cloverpress.com, everybody. And thanks, St. Canals, for...
No, cloverpress.us.
Thank you. Cloverpress.us, everybody. I apologize for the mistake.
And what we're doing, because of the pipeline trouble.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Sure. No.
Because of the pipeline troubles, we're going to be reprinted volumes 2 and 3 together, and we're going to be printing.
Wow.
We're going to print 4 and 5 together, so that we'll have one on sale, and the other one will be sitting there waiting to be released. We're shooting to release 3 books a year, so in 4 years we'll have the complete Terry.
Wow, that's fantastic! And again,
and it'll look like this.
How about that? Gorgeous. Again, no, really, man, the level of detail and love that you put in these volumes, it's so worth the price. And these really, again, if anyone is interested in the history of comics, you've come to the right place when it's the Library of American Comics and Dean Mullaney. Dean, thanks so much for this conversation.
Okay, really John, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody.
I hope we can do this again soon. But, maybe at the beginning of next year or something. It would be great. Hell, we'd talk more about Eclipse and everything, too.
Good. Sounds like fun.
That's great,
Take care.
Everybody, thank you very much, Dean Mullaney. I tell you what, I'm going to get back with everybody in just about an hour, and I'm talking to Patrick Schumacher, the co-showrunner of the Harley Quinn cartoon on HBO Max. They just wrapped up season 3, and also Patrick involved with Abbott Elementary, and they managed to win an Emmy last week. So that's going to be a fun conversation in just about 60 minutes. So I hope you join us for that.